Thanks a lot for coming down. Actually, the advertised presentation, the actual title didn't actually make it to the website. So I don't know whether that's because it's a poor title or whether it was lost in translation. Welcome to Macadduck, the third year of Macadduck. My third year here, but my first year presenting. Privileged to be here in front of you, and I'm very well aware of the other presentation going on at the same time. So thanks very much for coming along to this session, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. From the title, Shampoo and Conditioner, or Shampoo and Conditional Access. If we think about this, the conditional access part, which is driven from Microsoft, you can absolutely use it first, just as if you got in a shower and you put the conditioner on first, but you probably won't get the desired effects. So throw the shampoo in there, or in this case, Jamf Pro. We've then got Jamf Pro with the conditional access from Microsoft, and then you're going to be able to get the best out of the two solutions. Make sense or tedious link? Makes sense. Okay, fine. Before we sort of jump in, to give you sort of an idea of who I am, I'm Dave Hornby. I'm a systems engineer for Jamf in the UK, and I always get asked, well, what on earth does that mean? Well, essentially, I sort of go out, speak to prospective customers, speak to existing customers, and make sure that they're getting the most out of Jamf Pro. Or prospective customers who want to use Jamf Pro. And part of my role is keeping up to date with what we're adding to the product. So when the Intune integration was announced with Microsoft, a lot of people were on the phone sort of trying to find out more and more information about what it could do for them. Previous to that role, I worked in the channel for a number of years, an Apple reseller, and I was one of the first Jamf integrators in the UK. So for those of you who are Jamf customers, you'll probably have all sat through a jump start. I used to deliver those back in the day, so I am a technical person. I do have a technical role, although from this side, I don't profess to know it all. And I'd be really keen to hear from you guys, if anyone is using this partnership, your experience of it, how you're getting on, and if you do have questions, definitely sort of come and find us. It is actually quite a nice respite being here today, because I'm also going through a major renovation project at home, and I've just had a phone call off the roofers, and the wrong size roof's been delivered. So that's really looking forward to picking that phone up after this.
Too big or too small?
Too big, so it should be easily fixed. And the other shout out to the name, Shampoo and Conditioner. You can obviously see it's been a good number of years since I threw any shampoo on my head. Yeah, exactly. So to make sure we're sort of all in the same page, you know, a bit of a run through, and if you have read the blurb on the talk online, I want to tell you a little bit about what Jamf are up to over sort of the past 12 months through 2017, and specifically a little bit more about what went on behind the scenes, because Jamf has sort of evolved into this massive global organisation, and any customers, and I know there's people in the room who've been around since the very early days, you're probably well aware that we've sort of grown massively. So we'll have a look at what we did in 2017. Then we'll get into the Microsoft Intune integration, what it means for you guys, what it means for Microsoft, what it means for us. And I'm going to sort of look at it from two angles. The end user experience, which is very important to Jamf, but then also from a configuration point of view, probably predominantly Mac admins in the room. But from a configuration point of view, if you are working with your counterparts, or if you are managing your Intune tenant as well, you might be able to pick up some caveats of to be completely honest, where I went wrong when I was setting all this up. Hopefully you'll be able to not make the same mistake. And then we've got a little bit extra at the end, and then if you do have any questions, do fire them up, and if we do run out of time, you've probably seen the booth out there. Come out, grab a pen, have a chat, and if you want to have a beer later on, then come and find us. And if you did read my bit about me, you'll know that I'm a keen collector of fine gins as well, so if any of you've brought any bottles along, just leave them at the front as you leave. That'd be perfect. Okay, wrong laptop, because I've got two laptops now. Okay, so Jamf, very quickly, Jamf Now, Jamf Pro. Jamf Now, formerly Bushel, Jamf Pro, formerly the Casper Suite, and essentially, anyone who doesn't know, it's all about, we see ourselves as a management framework that essentially allows users to get the most out of their Apple devices. So it's very much the user at the centre. Today, we're going to be very much concentrating on Jamf Pro. That's where the integration has come with with Microsoft. But I just want you to remember as we step through this, it's very much about the end users at the centre. It's all about the end user experience. We don't want to be the hinder. We don't want to be seen as the blocker from users, compromising the experience they would have on a laptop. He says that with 2 laptops here because we couldn't get the presentation working on one. So just bear that in mind. We're all about having the user at the centre, and you'll see that becomes more prevalent as we sort of step through the slides. So 2017, busy year. President Trump came in, North Korea, getting a bit more nuclear. Britain trigger Article 50. Very busy year 2017. Also busy for Jamf. As you can see here, if we go back to the start of the year, we were the first to sort of announce support with tvOS for the device enrollment program. So you could now wirelessly and managerously almost deploy your Apple TVs. And throughout the year, from Apple's spring release to Apple's fall release, we continued that commitment to what we would call Day Zero support, supporting Apple's new features from the start, in both spring and in the fall release. And then if we really ramped it up towards the end of the year with JNUC back in October announcing Jamf Pro 10, brand new user interface, brand new self-service. This idea, we took patch management to another level from where it was previously in 9. Customers in the room, everyone on 10 now? Show of hands quick. Like it? Oh, like it, perfect. And then of course, Ignite in September, Microsoft actually announced the partnership with ourselves for the Microsoft Intune integration, which is what we're going to be talking about here. So a little bit that went on in the background. I speak to multiple organisations, especially in regulated industries, that have sort of in recent times adopted this idea of cloud first. They want to go to the cloud, but it's not necessarily straightforward. So we worked incredibly hard, the InfoSec team worked incredibly hard to have get SOC 2 compliance in 2017. And it seems small, but actually getting that is just a great big rubber stamp in front of many regulated organisations. So that took an awful lot of work, but we can now officially say we are SOC 2 compliant. And also globally, Jamf Cloud, for Jamf Cloud people in the room, which is our online hosting service. Until recently, that didn't have a global reach. And again, from a regulated industry point of view, people need their data at rest within certain regions. And again, the online services team expanded in 2017 and added support in Japan and Australia in AWS regions for Jamf Cloud. And then the other one to highlight there is, it seems small, the Japanese admin guide. I don't know why we use that as an example, but we spent an awful lot of time localizing the product so we can now appeal natively to a more global audience. And if anyone does speak Japanese and would like to proof our Japanese admin guide, if we have any faults, then that would be much appreciated as well. Alongside the sort of product, we've also got Jamf Nation. We've got a whole team behind us sort of managing Jamf Nation as a product in its own right. And the one in the center there, the introduction of multiple beta programs. So for the first time, customers being able to actually go in there and actually pick whether they enrolled in Jamf Pro 10 beta or within Jamf Pro 9.101. It was a massive thing, and going forward, it will allow customers, if we have multiple betas again, to actually opt into the one that's more relevant to them, depending on the change. So when we release our next release, you may well see multiple betas running at the same time, which allows us to gather feedback not only from the current beta, but then potentially future betas as well. And then, like all good social media, seems small again, liking comments within Jamf Nation, which, believe it or not, only actually became a thing in this year. Enough of that anyway, let's get into what we're here to sort of talk about. And I'd like to try and put an image on there and sort of just get a feel in the room for what a picture means to you, what sort of thoughts it might evoke. And essentially what we've got here is 2 people. We can definitely say that. We can definitely say one's a male and female. They're on laptops, but we don't really know where they are. So when you look at this picture, are they within an office? Are they within a library perhaps, or a university? Are they even working? Now we could assume that they are in a workplace. They're working wirelessly. I don't see any wires in there. So potentially what we've got here is unsecure devices. We don't know who the two people are at the moment. So we're making some assumptions that we don't know the users. We're not sure whether the device is secure, but we're fairly sure that they're wireless. So mobile workers, and that's very much what this is about. How can we trust those users on those devices to gain access to corporate information? And as we step through this, I just want you to sort of think about this whole idea about trusted identity on trusted devices. Which brings us into our Microsoft Intune integration. When this sort of was first announced, I got a lot of questions. Why for this partnership? And it does boil down to a few simple things, really. Microsoft, pretty big organisation, manage an awful lot of devices across the globe. They were going into organisations wanting to manage the whole estate, and what they were finding was a lot of their customers, a lot of their enterprise customers were already using Jamf to manage their hundreds, if not thousands of Macs. However, on the side of the Jamf users or the Mac admins, they were getting pushback from upstairs because they were using Intune, and we want to secure these devices. We want to secure people's access to things like Outlook, email, OneDrive, for example. So it seemed quite obvious, and looking back now, it seems quite obvious. Microsoft talked to our people talked to Microsoft, and it seems simple. Let's get the conditional access part of Intune and deliver conditional access to our fleet of all devices. But Jamf's already doing a good job on the device management point of view. So rather than try and manage the devices in Intune, why don't we just carry on and use Jamf? And that is essentially where the partnership was born. And like I mentioned, it's all about this idea about trusted identity. And if we break this up into three sort of separate sections, we've got the user at the top, we've got the network, and then we've got the device. And if we break each of this section down, if we think about the user first, we can reasonably secure that user, especially using something like Azure Active Directory. We can give a user some credentials, a username, a password, perhaps a secure ID token. However, where is that user authenticating from? Is that user authenticating from within the network? So then, is the connection secure? Well, again, if we're in a safe network, if we're in a regulated environment, then potentially we could secure the network. We can use firewall rules, we can use network access control, we might even secure the network with 802.1x. However, when we step out of that fence, then where does that leave us? Potentially on a non-secure network. And then, of course, there is the device. So if we have a device enrolled within Jamf, we can of course say that we will trust the device. We can push out policies. We can make sure the device is encrypted. We can make sure the device meets certain password requirements. However, the applications on that device is a different matter. Yes, we can keep them up to date. But what about at the point where we actually access that information, that corporate information? So essentially, what we want to get to is this idea of a trusted identity is moving from untrusted users, potentially using untrusted devices on an untrusted network. We want to move that across so we can trust the user on a trusted device, and we can use trusted applications. In this example, our Office 365 suite. And we've got two sort of scenarios, or two general scenarios we can throw these things into. Data behind the firewall, data in the cloud. So I think behind the firewall, I sort of touched on, we've got users, iMacs, suite of iMacs, or we've got stationary machines. We can secure them in any way possible. But we see more and more mobile workers, more and more laptops. So even if you've got a laptop in an office, well, potentially it's secure while it's in the office, but as soon as they go home for the evening and give it to their 9-year-old child, potentially they're on anything. So you could say that as soon as you've got a device on the edge or leaves, that device is not secure, and what are they bringing back into the network? So what we see more and more of now, especially with organisations we're speaking to, is this idea of data in the cloud. I don't think that's necessarily a new term anymore, for sure. But we're actually now seeing organisations, they don't even have traditional IT, they don't even have any on-site IT, they don't have a traditional directory service, they don't have traditional Exchange or mail servers. Everything's in the cloud. So you authenticate with the username and password that's provided to you as part of your new starter process. However, because it is all in the cloud, your device might not be secure. And it's how we get a balance between the two. And this is sort of the way that Microsoft talks about conditional access. Let me just take that out for a second. Conditional access provides the control and protection you need to keep your corporate data secure while giving your people an experience that allows them to do their best work from any device. And the things to take from that, it gives your people an experience that allows them to do their best work. And that's very in line with what Jamf would say. Like I said, we don't want to be the blocker. We want to make sure that the user can get their laptop, they can provision their device themselves using DEP. And then with the conditional access, they can just access their information, access their applications using their identity, and it doesn't hinder that onboarding experience or that experience of gaining access to the corporate information. So how it works, we can break it down like this. Essentially, if we look at this as a journey, we've got the machine, or point A, and then we've got the company resources, or Office 365 is point B. How do we get from A to B? Well, first up, we can see by the picture on the MacBook that we're enrolled within Jamf. Okay, so the Mac is managed by Jamf. And interestingly, if you're not managed by Jamf and you do try and go straight from A to B, it will redirect you to your user-initiated enrollment and actually prompt you to enroll your device. So if you haven't got DEP devices, then you will be prompted to enroll using user-initiated. At that point, the Mac then needs to be registered with Intune. Okay, and that's via what we call an Azure AD Join. In this example, we can see that the Mac is managed with Jamf. So when the user tries to access their resources, they will be redirected and the Mac will need to be registered with Intune. At that point, your inventory data, which is in Jamf, is shared to Intune. And then based on the compliance of that device, it's Intune that enforces the conditional access to the application that you're trying to gain access to. If you are compliant, Intune says, yep, device is compliant, because that information is all coming from Jamf, and we will grant access to the company resources, usually email. However, if you're not compliant, we can block access, redirect the user back into self-service, and provide the remediation steps that the user needs to take. And of course, those of you who've used self-service and seen self-service, we can dress that up in any way you would like to do by using a policy. So that's sort of a high level of how all this is sort of put together. If in the room, like me, you like to sort of see things in action, we've got a machine, okay, and this is Jane's machine. We've got a few different scenarios for Jane. You can see straight away in this scenario, she's enrolled in Jamf. We can see that by the fact we've got self-service in the dock. Jane's a new starter. This is her very first day, and she's been told she needs to jump in her email. So at this point, the device is enrolled, the dock's been configured for her for the very first time, of course. People can manage their own docks. So she's going to go straight ahead and jump into her email. She's so keen to get started with work. So she's going to launch email. The suite has come down as part of the enrollment process, the Office 365 suite. It's been activated already. So what she's now going to do is try and set her email up. It's picked up her username from Office 365 and it will now connect into Office 365. Of course, it's going to prompt her for authentication into Office 365. And you'll see straight away that the device has not been enrolled within Azure AD. So Jane now needs to enroll. If she launches it, of course we've launched a web browser, so she is going to need to authenticate again with her work credentials to actually gain access to Office 365. So at this point, if you weren't already enrolled within Jamf, this would redirect you to user-initiated enrollment, but because she already is, it's actually going to redirect her to self-service, put her straight into the device compliance category, and prompt her to do an Azure AD Join. Now this is Azure AD Join, it's not a traditional bind. Let's not get started on bind or not bind. This is actually invoking a process via Microsoft's company portal, so it's another application. So she is going to need to authenticate with those Office 365 credentials. So she'll put her password in, sign in. We'll establish a connection back to Azure AD. Company access setup complete. And then while it finishes, it is going to prompt her again for her Office 365 credentials, because now we need to check compliance. So is the device compliant? Okay, at that point, we've got this Jamf AAD. Okay, so that's a new part of the binary, which has come down as 10.1. And that is where all this information is stored, in that part of the binary. Okay, so we can see now, it's switched over to rejoin. So Jane's machine is now registered within Azure AD, and it's now registered within Jamf. We can check that by going into the Intune portal. Oh, fancy. And we can see she's enrolled, but she's now not compliant. Okay, so we can see straight away that she's in there, but she's not compliant. Next step for Jane is going to be getting compliance. Or now, in fact, Jane is actually now just going to think, right, I've registered, so I'm now going to get into my Outlook. So let's launch Outlook again. Again, it's going to treat her as a new user, so it is going to prompt her for authentication. So she'll sign into Office 365 to now try and add her email. Oops, you can't get this yet. It sees that it's registered, but now when we launch the device management portal, we're now checking for compliance. And based on the conditional access you've placed on your suite of apps, will tell us what we need to do. So this is actually going to launch the My Devices portal part of Intune. And it will say straight away why you're not compliant. So in this example, a password is too short. She can check compliance again if she thinks she's changed the password. However, because she knows she's set admin as a password, she knows that it's not compliant. So she's going to launch self-service and change her local password. Now this is just installing a configuration profile via MDM. So of course we can't change necessarily that on the fly. So she's going to need to log out. So we're telling her within self-service exactly what she needs to do. We could of course dress this up in another way if we like. However, in this example, she's going to quit out of her applications. Because she's a proper user. Quits all the applications properly. Logs out. And now this time, when she tries to log back in, with the same password, of course, it's going to recognize the configuration profile, characteristics, realize that she's not compliant and prompt her for a new password. Now, of course, those of you who've seen config profiles and the passcode payload, you've got multiple options on how we dress this up, alphanumeric, 11 characters, and you can very much mirror your AD setup if you wish. User logs in. Right, she thinks, surely, I can now get my email. New session, launching one of the Office 365 desktop apps. She's going to launch it. She's going to need to add her account in. So, of course, she's going to need to connect to Office 365 and put her password in for one more time. However, now we are compliant because our compliance rule says we need to have a certain password length. So we're now just setting her email up just like you would as if you were at home. The user now has her first emails. We now know the device is compliant from a Microsoft point of view. So we're now happy to grant her access. So we've secured the device and we know who the user is accessing that information. Now, I don't know what you thought. I do think there's quite a lot of password prompts in that whole workflow for the user. And it is something that we are working with Microsoft to sort of come around that. But hopefully by seeing that and each password and why it's used, absolutely, I think it'd be great if we could have some form of token that passes through each box. It is a new partnership. It is something we're obviously going to evolve all the time, and I would expect some new iterations of this Intune integration as 2018 goes along. Okay, so from a configuration point of view, Workplace Join, the end user interaction is required. It's not a domain bind, like we mentioned. It registers the Mac within Azure AD and Intune. It stores the device, user and tenant data in the user's login keychain, and that's what it prompts that AAD password for. And critically, this workflow needs to be invoked from self-service. Now, the reason for that is if a user actually goes into applications and launches the company portal app, what it will actually try and do is enroll into MDM. And of course, we can't be enrolled into two MDM solutions at a time. So it does need to be invoked from self-service. So the easy answer there is make sure that the application is on the device before you initiate this Workplace Join. In terms of the information that we're passing to Intune at the moment, there is 22 current items which are listed in the admin guide. But the high-level ones there, you can see serial number, device name, battery capacity, and this is used for reporting. This isn't used from a compliance point of view. This is just if you've got your Intune admin or your Windows admin guys, they want one tool to report because that's our job, we report. They can report on this information on their whole estate straight from within Intune. And then from a configuration point of view, so what can we build this compliance around? You can see that they're listed on there. System integrity, OS version, if you want everyone on a certain version before they gain access, we can set that with a compliance policy within Intune. Local account password that you saw in the example very much mirrors up with the payloads that you deliver via Jamf. And I think the example I gave you was quite an extreme one because the chances are you're not going to set a policy that doesn't meet compliance. So if we talk about the new world and this whole DEP enrollment, chances are as part of that whole onboarding process you're going to set the user's password, you're going to push out disk encryption. But some of the other not so obvious things we can set from a configuration point of view is actually restricting from where a user logs in from. So if you've got people traveling around and you maybe don't want them accessing their corporate resources in a certain country or region, we can set that within Intune. Okay, what do we need to do to actually get this set up? Now, I hope you can all sort of see that. It's a big screen. Okay, first of all, we need to create a new application within Azure AD. So that's the very first thing we do. And you can see where to get to that. On all these screenshots, there'll be a path if you want to see this, or if you've got access to Intune, you can set this up. So when we create an application within Azure AD, we're given an application ID. And that's created dynamically when you first create this application. And you will need that application as we go through the configuration. I can't see it from here. Okay. Once we've got that application ID, we then need to create the compliance connector for Jamf. So you'll see if you scroll into Intune, Device Compliance, Partner Device Management, there isn't a choice here. You can only see one option, and that's Jamf, because this is the only partnership currently out there that works in this way. Okay? And you can see where we need the application ID that we created in step 1 is we specify it right there. Okay? So actually getting this up and running, it doesn't take all that amount of configuration from a back-end point of view. However, what we do need to make sure is that we're licensed from an Intune point of view, and we need to be licensed to Enterprise Mobility and a subscription into Office 365 Enterprise. Now, if, like me, you try and set this up without having those licenses assigned to your users or your groups, this just won't work. So you need to make sure that when a user is created, they're in a specific group that actually has these licenses assigned to that group. But then we also need to make sure that we've assigned the application that we've created. We also need to make sure we've assigned the application to the groups of the users that we've created and are using our Macs. Again, if you miss this step, when you try and launch for compliance, it will actually not recognize you as a user, because it doesn't see that you're necessarily on a Mac. From a Jamf point of view, truth is, very, very straightforward. We come into Jamf Pro, Settings, Global Management. There's a nice new button there, Microsoft Intune Integration. We tick the box. We give it our tenant name, and we give it the application ID that we created in step 1. So that application ID, once you've done it, that will remain the same. If any of you've seen the Intune interface, it's not necessarily clear when you first look at the applications that one has been created. So my advice would be, if someone's setting this up, is for one person to do the setup from start to finish and document it. Because if you create a second application ID, because you think it's not listed, the default view is to not list all your applications within Azure AD. If you use a different application ID than what's listed in Jamf, whole thing breaks. Okay, then from a policy point of view, Microsoft Intune, device compliance policies, we can see on the side over here, we define a platform, so macOS. And then if we dig into that a little bit more, you can sort of see the options here of what we can do. So we've got system integrity, OS versioning, like I mentioned, and then the password and the disk encryption from a security point of view. If you feel you'd like to build more compliance in this is Microsoft's compliance engine. So for those of you who've got a relationship with Microsoft, would encourage you to reach out to them and say, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could do compliance around a certain version of whatever that may be. But this is all just driven from the Intune compliance engine and conditional access. Okay, similar, you're going to need to apply that policy to a group, individual users or a group. So you might have different policies for different users based on location, based on different compliance requirements. You might have a completely different set of rules for users that never leave the office. So you don't necessarily mind about the password or disk encryption especially. So we can have multiple policies and we're assigning them to groups of users as opposed to groups of machines. From a Jamf point of view, like I mentioned, the company portal needs to be present on the device before you invoke this process. Easiest way to do that is get the package installer, put it straight into Jamf, and actually trigger it on an enrollment complete. So then the user's never going to have an issue where they are trying to launch this Azure AD Join, launch the company portal, and it's not actually there. So that's step one. And then for those of you who are on the latest version, for those of you running 10.1, you may have seen a new payload under policies. We've dropped a new one in there, Microsoft Intune integration, and it's literally that checkbox there. So when you saw that in the example, the self-service pop up with the device compliance policy, that's that policy there. Okay, so if we have a recap, this is what you saw. So the Mac is managed by Jamf. It's registered with Intune. The inventory data is shared from Jamf to Intune. When the user authenticates, that's when compliance is checked. And based on that compliance of the machine, we either grant access or we deny. So if we come back to that initial idea of where are these users, what are these users doing, do we really mind? Because we do now know that this is Jane. She's now on a secure device, accessing secure information, and it's all governed by the compliance. So it doesn't matter where she takes this device. It could be disk encrypted, the password is set, and we now have a trusted user on a trusted device using trusted applications. Some useful links that if you want to take a snap of, there's a mixture here of Jamf and knowledge-based articles as well as Microsoft, because the admin guides are actually really useful, especially the Microsoft ones are really takes to the point of exactly what permissions you need to set up for that application ID, what we need to do from a Jamf point of view to get all this working, but then also what to do from a troubleshooting point of view as well. If you want to see a little bit more information about the whole thing, we do have a webinar online, how to ensure Mac compliance using Intune and Jamf Pro. I'd encourage you, if you do want to take this to the next level, to actually watch that. It goes into this idea. It's a really good intro, especially into that whole trusted network, trusted users. If you want to hand that to someone and say, hey, look at this, this is the way things are going, it's a really useful sort of opening sort of 15 or 20 minutes. But there is one more thing. Not to do with conditional access. Those of you who've been before, potentially to last year, our Jamf Nation Roadshow is moving forward a few months. And it's now confirmed for the 17th of May 2018. And some finer details, it's going to be at the Mermaid, which, not being from London, I'm not actually sure geographically where that is, but it's in London. And from listening, from feedback from previous years, we'd really like to hear from customers on what you'd like to present. We're very opening this for the first time to customers to actually come along and talk at the Roadshow. If you do have an idea for a talk, perhaps you've put Intune in already, and the partnership, you might want to come and talk about that, because people, believe me, people ask me about this more than a lot of other features within Jamf. Just email your idea to roadshows@jamf.com. We only came up with this slide yesterday, so the Jamf Nation post isn't live yet, but keep your eye out and it will appear. Very similar to those of you who know about the Jamf Nation User Conference, how we do a call for presenters. Going to be a very simple process. Any questions? I am aware that after this it's lunch, so if you don't want to ask questions now, we have got a booth. I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got over lunch, or if you've got any now, my trusted official thrower, is going to throw the box with. If anyone's got any questions.
No one asks because I just make sure they get it.
Yeah.
Go on, any questions? No? Cool. You must have been that good, Dave. You were that good that no one's got any questions.
Well, thanks very much. I do. Oh, we got a question. Oh, sorry. You're out of my eye line now. I'm looking at the back.
I know, I'm looking at the back.
Sorry.
What does Jamf stand for? or mean? Is it an acronym or is it just a word?
I honestly don't know. Flat batted. There's all sorts of theories, conspiracy theories. Bearing in mind I'm on tape, I won't say anything now. Come over to the booth and we can talk about the various different things that have been bandied about.